My father promised I'd be his wife. That's what the girl said standing at the gate of the ranch, with a suitcase at her feet and Wyatt Callahan boots caked in red dust didn't know whether to laugh or shut the gate in her face. The 11 o'clock sun fell straight down on the gravel road. That gold Texas dust that gets into a person's teeth before it ever gets into their eyes. Wyatt had been out mending fence wire when he saw her coming a small shape climbing the rise on foot, carrying something that looked from a distance like a bundle of kindling. And up close, a battered wicker suitcase with a leather strap crossed over it like it was holding something in that might try to escape. She carried it with both hands, not slung over a shoulder, held like it weighed something different than luggage should. She stopped 3 steps from the gate, hair half loose in the wind, a cheap dress but ironed, dust climbing her ankles, a face that couldn't decide between scared and determined, so it was both at once. "Come again," Wyatt said because he'd heard her just fine and still needed to hear it twice. "My father promised I'd be his wife." She set the suitcase down by her foot without letting go of the handle all the way. "The late Ezra Whitfield, my father. He gave his word to your father a long time ago. I'm Delia, Dee if you like." Wyatt stood there with the hammer half raised. Behind him, a cow chewed its cud, watching him with no particular interest. The rooster had gone quiet. The only sound was loose fence wire swinging where he'd left it. "My father," Wyatt said slowly, "is dead. We buried him a month ago." "I know." Something moved across her face fast, and she put it away. "That's why I came now and not before. I came as soon as I could. Mine passed in February. Before he died, he made me promise I'd come here and keep his word. So here I am." "Here you are." Wyatt finally lowered the hammer, took his hat off, put it back on just to buy himself a second, because he had no earthly idea what a man says to a woman who walks up on foot and tells him he's her husband before she's even had a glass of water. "Look, Miss D." He said the name careful, like testing a blade with his thumb. "I never knew Ezra Whitfield. I don't know anything about any promise. My daddy never once told me I was going to marry somebody who'd show up walking on a Tuesday. If it was true, he'd have told me. My daddy wasn't a man for keeping secrets. He was a man for shouting things. He didn't keep this one." Dee pulled a folded paper from the collar of her dress, soft from being folded so many times the creases had gone nearly clear. She held it out, but didn't let go of it yet. "It's written in my father's hand and signed by yours. I have the paper." He looked at the paper, didn't take it. Something in him wouldn't, the way a man won't pick up a snake even if he's sworn it's dead. "Put it away," he said. "I'm not going to read it. You don't have to read anything to know this is foolishness." He said it without anger, almost tired. The voice of a man who'd signed too many papers at the funeral home and the county office this past month and didn't want to see one more as long as he lived. "You made a mighty long trip for nothing, Dee. I mean that I'm sorry. But I didn't ask anybody to bring me a wife. I don't want one and I can't keep one. This ranch barely keeps me, and some months it doesn't even do that. Look around." She looked, and instead of letting her guess, he pointed things out one by one with his chin reading it off like a list of debts. "Look good. That farmhouse is falling apart, patched over patches. Roof's got 2 leaks I've named. The corral's built out of crooked posts, and inside it 6 skinny cows barely getting by and a bull older than I am. That gate you're standing at is hanging on one hinge, and it screeches like a haint every time the wind blows. And that gnarled old tree over yonder, that's the live oak that gives this place its name. Good for nothing but shade. Nobody buys the acorns off it, nobody wants them. All this ranch grows in any real abundance is dust, ma'am. Gold dust. Look at it." The dust drifted down between them slow, like it was proving him right. "I see it," Dee said. "And you still want to stay." "I never said I wanted to stay." It came out fast, almost offended, and he raised an eyebrow. "I said I came to keep my father's word. What you do with that is your business. I kept mine. I walked from the bus depot. It's 7 miles. I counted. I got here. I said it. It's said. It's said, Wyatt repeated. It's said. And there they stood, one on either side of the screeching gate, two stubborn people sizing each other up, the gold dust drifting down between them like even the air was waiting to see who'd talk first. He talked first, but it wasn't what either of them expected. You eaten? Dee blinked. Come again? I asked if you'd eaten. It's 11 o'clock. You walked 7 miles and you're going pale. Wyatt shoved open the good half of the gate, the one with both hinges, with his shoulder. I'm not marrying you. Let's be clear on that right now. I'm not marrying you, but I'm also not going to let you keel over at my front gate and have the whole town saying Wyatt Callahan starved an orphan girl to death. Come on in. There's beans and coffee. She didn't move right away. Then she picked the suitcase back up, both hands by the handle again. I don't keel over, she said, walking past him. Sure don't look like it. Must be the sun. Uh-huh. Inside, it smelled of wood smoke and reheated coffee, a pine table, a cast-iron skillet on the stove, black with age, worn smooth and shining, the one thing in that kitchen that looked cared for. In the corner, a little shelf with a candle burned halfway down, and a photograph of a mustached man. His father, a month in the ground, still keeping watch over the house. Dee set the suitcase by the door against the wall where she could see it. She didn't open it. She settled it with the kind of care you'd use tucking in a sleeping child, and sat down on the bench with her back very straight, like she hadn't decided yet whether she was staying. Wyatt watched her set the suitcase down, watched her not open it, and something about that, about the way she guarded a closed-up thing, stuck with him more than anything she'd said so far. What have you got in there? He asked, serving the beans. Mine. Yours meaning what? Meaning mine. Dee set both hands on the table, one over the other, closing the subject. The only thing that's mine, and it doesn't open. I didn't ask if it opens. Well, in case you were fixing to ask, save your breath. Wyatt set the plate in front of her and didn't push, but he kept glancing at that suitcase against the wall, that leather strap cinched across it like a belt pulled tight, and he thought, a woman doesn't guard an empty thing like that. They ate mostly in silence. She had a hunger she hid badly, breaking her cornbread into little pieces to make it last. He watched her sideways, pretending to be busy fixing the strap on the hammer. These beans are good, Dee said. Miss Etta made them, down at the mill, sends them over with her grandson. I don't cook. I do. Good for you. Dee set down the cornbread, looked at him straight on with that bluntness of hers that put a little fear into a person. Look, Wyatt, I'm going to talk to you plain, because I don't know how to talk any other way, and it's plain to see you don't either. She took a breath. I didn't come looking for a husband. If it was up to me, I wouldn't marry a man who looks at me like I'm a fine he's got to pay. I came because my father was dying, and the only thing he asked of me was that I come to Redbud, to the Lone Oak Ranch, and tell a Callahan that his daughter came to keep the promise. I told him yes, because you don't tell a dying man no. I kept my word. I came. I'm saying if you don't want it, that's your right. But tell me straight with the paper in your hand, so I can go back and tell my father's grave that the promise was delivered and the other man didn't want it. That's all I need, a yes or a no, straight out. Wyatt set the hammer down. It's no, he said. But thank you for coming all this way to hear it straight. Dee nodded once, like someone receiving news they already expected, and it still weighs something. Then that's that. She stood up and went for the suitcase, and he watched her lift it again, that skinny girl with a suitcase that seemed to weigh twice what it should, walking for the door. And at the last second, hand already on the frame, he heard his own voice say something foolish. Where you fixin' to go? Dee stopped. Back to the depot. Wait for tomorrow's bus. Bus doesn't come till 6 in the morning. It's 12:30. You'll spend the whole day and night on a bench at the depot. I've spent nights in worse places. She said it without any pity in it, like a plain fact, and that's exactly why it landed harder on him, because he was a man who noticed things said without wanting pity. No, Wyatt said, and stood up, too irritated with himself. No, look, I'm not about to send you off to sleep on a bench. Enough dead men watching me from the corner of my own kitchen. He nodded toward the little shelf, the candle, the mustached photograph. There's a barn out back. Nothing fancy, but it's got a roof, clean hay, keeps the damp out. Stay there tonight. Tomorrow I'll drive you to the depot myself so you don't have to walk. Then we go our separate ways, and that's the end of it. Dee eyed him. One night. One night, she said, raising a finger. And it's not that I'm staying, understand? It's that the bus leaves at 6. Exactly. I don't want you staying. I want you not fainting on a bench. Different things. Something almost escaped the corner of her mouth, a smile she decided not to let live, and she wiped it away quick. But he saw it, and for some reason it made his whole day better. The barn sat behind the house, past the live oak, an adobe room with an empty feed trough, a window with no glass, boarded with a feed sack and a pile of hay in the corner that smelled of dry country air. Wyatt came in with a folded blanket under one arm and a candle in the other. Blanket's there, candle's there. Don't leave it burning near the hay. Water's at the well, by the corral buckets there. And if you hear noises in the night, that's just possums, not haints, though my daddy always called 'em haints so he wouldn't have to go out and chase possums. He set the things on the trough. 5:30 tomorrow I'll knock. Dee looked the room over, set the suitcase in the driest corner away from the window against the wall. Settled it the same way she had in the kitchen, careful, upright, watchable. Thank you, truly. Don't thank me, I'm running you off just with manners. This time she did smile just a little, and this time she let him see it. Well, it's the kindest runoff I've ever gotten. Don't get used to it. 6 o'clock tomorrow, the kindness ends. 6 o'clock, Dee repeated. You can count on me being ready before you. I get up at 5. Then I'll get up at 4:30, she said, and settled into the hay like she'd just won something. He stood in the doorway, not sure why he was still there. That suitcase, he said. Why do you guard it so close? Dee sat down in the hay next to the suitcase and laid a hand over the woven lid, not to open it, just to hold it. Because it's the only thing I ever chose myself, she said it quiet. Everything else in my life, somebody gave it to me, or somebody took it away. This suitcase was my mother's. When she died, my father wanted to sell it. I was 7 years old, and I planted myself in front of him and told him, not that one. Everything else fine, but not that one. And it stayed. It's the only thing I have that nobody handed me. I chose it. Wyatt watched her from the doorway. That girl in the hay with her hand on a wicker suitcase, candlelight painting half her face orange and leaving the other half in shadow. Good night, Dee, he said and left, because if he'd stayed one more second he was going to ask what was inside. And something told him that question didn't get asked yet. That night in his own bunk, Wyatt didn't sleep. One thing wouldn't leave his head. Why does a man who's dying send his daughter off alone 7 miles of dust to a stranger's ranch? Fathers don't do that on a whim, only when they've got nothing left to give. The next morning at 5:30, Wyatt went to knock on the barn to drive her to the depot. Dee was already up, but she wasn't packing. She was milking, sitting on the stool forehead against the flank of the gentlest cow, hands steady, the bucket filling with that double stream sound only somebody who learned it as a child can make. She looked at him over the cow's back without stopping. This one's low, Dee said, like they were picking up a conversation from earlier. Mastitis in the back quarter, needs a poultice or you'll lose her. And that spotted one's carrying, I'd say 2 months. You knew that? Wyatt stood in the corral gate with the truck keys in his hand. Bus leaves at 6, he said, because it was the only thing he had planned to say. I know that, Dee kept milking. That's why I hurried the milking to get it done before I go. I don't like leaving a job half finished. He stood there watching her milk his ranch's sick cow, the bucket filling the sun not even up yet. And he didn't drive to town. He put the keys away and said the second dumbest thing he'd said in 2 days. You know how to treat mastitis, I do? How do I know you're not just saying that to stay? Dee finally looked up from the bucket. Look, Wyatt, if I wanted to force my way in here, I'd have said yes to your marriage promise yesterday at the gate, and right now you'd have a wife and I'd have a free roof. I told you to decide straight out, remember? And you said no. A woman trying to worm her way in doesn't ask to be run off. She went back to milking. I'm offering to treat a cow because I feel sorry for the cow. Not for you. You're a lost cause. A laugh got away from Wyatt, one he hadn't let out in a month, not since the funeral. Stay till she's healed, he said. Just till then. Then I'll drive you to the depot. Dee didn't look up from the bucket, but somewhere inside her where nobody could see, something old and hardened loosened by a thread. Till she's healed, she repeated, and that's not staying. No, he said. How could it be? The mastitis took 9 days to cure. By the 4th day, nobody was talking about the depot anymore. Nobody decided it out loud. Nobody said stay in so many words. There was simply every morning a new reason, and she was always the one who found it. The spotted one's about to calve, Dee said the 2nd day, scrubbing the skillet. I can't leave and let her calve alone with you not knowing what you're doing. I can pull a calf. Done it before. Knowing how it's done and having done it aren't the same thing, Dee said, not looking up from the skillet. Anybody can know how. And she stayed. On the 4th day it was the fence. This whole corral's rotten, she said, pulling a post that came loose in her hand. One cow leans on it and half the herd gets out. 2 of us can fix it in half the time. You want me to leave and you do it alone? I didn't say leave. Then hand me the pliers. On the 6th day it was the skillet. Dee found it caked black with old scorch, scraped it clean, cured it with tallow till it shone like a mirror. When Wyatt saw it gleaming, he made a face she didn't let him get away with. What? Nothing. Just it wasn't dirty. It was dirty, Wyatt. A dirty skillet ruins the cornbread. Anybody knows that. You say that a lot. Anybody knows that. Because a lot of folks don't and just pretend they do. He laughed without meaning to and hid it under his hat, and she pretended not to see. The roof was the last one. The 2 leaks he knew by name. He climbed up to patch the shingles while she handed him nails from below, one at a time, calling up. Hold the beam. Not with that hand. The other one. If you fall, I've got nothing to pay for the doctor, so mind yourself. I'm minding myself so I can pay you. Mind yourself because I like having you around, but I'm not saying that for free, Dee said, and threw the next shingle up so he couldn't answer. Did you say you like having me around? He called from the roof, catching the shingle. I said mind yourself, not chat. Could have sworn you said you like having me around. You heard right. That's why I'm not repeating it. Dee handed up the last shingle without looking at him. Now get down, you're turning red, and it's not the sun. It's the sun, Wyatt said. Uh-huh, she said, handing him back his own word from the 1st day. And the 2 of them fell quiet, smiling, each looking off their own direction, him on the roof, her on the ground, the live oak throwing shade over both of them. The town, of course, talked. Redbud was small and gossip ran downhill, same as water. The one who came to check on it in person with a basket of fried pies as her excuse was Miss Etta, who ran the mill and thought the world of Wyatt. Came to meet your company. Miss Etta said no beating around the bush because at her age she didn't have time left for beating around bushes. And to warn you what folks are saying so it doesn't catch you flat-footed. And what are they saying? That Wyatt Callahan's got a girl living with him come from who knows where. Some say she sleeps in the barn. What a decent girl. Others say she doesn't. Dee wiped her hands on her apron and offered her hand. I sleep in the barn, and the ones saying otherwise are welcome to come check any time they please. Plenty of hay for everybody. Miss Etta let out a short laugh, took the hand, turned it, palm up, studied it like reading it. Seamstress hands and milking hands. Don't see that combination too often. My mother sewed. My father ran cattle, back when he had cattle. I learned from both before I lost both. Miss Etta let go of her hand, looked her up and down with that old woman radar that can tell a good one from a bad one at a glance. The radar came back good. She smiled. And the suitcase? Miss Etta said. Whole town's talking about the girl with the suitcase. Say you walked in carrying it and never let go, that you sleep with it, that not even Wyatt knows what's inside. It's not gold, Dee said, and that was all she said, and the name stuck from that day on. Not Delia, not Dee, the girl with the suitcase, the one who carried something and wouldn't put it down. A secret the size of a wicker case that she slept holding on to. It bothered Wyatt, that nickname, though he couldn't say exactly why. One evening, mopping the kitchen floor, he mentioned it. "Folks in town call you the girl with the suitcase." "I know, Miss Etta told me." Dee sat sewing by the window, catching the last light, mending a shirt of his with a worn-out elbow. "I don't like it." "Why not? It's true. I am a girl. I have a suitcase." She bit the thread to cut it. "It's all they know about me." I don't blame them. Most days, it's all I know about myself either. Wyatt set down the water bucket. "What do you mean that's all you know about yourself?" Dee didn't look up from the shirt. When she spoke, it was slow, the voice of someone saying something they'd thought a long time and never said out loud because there'd never been anyone to say it to. "Look, Wyatt, nobody has ever loved me for me. My mother loved me, but she died when I was 7. My father loved me in his own way, which was loving my mother through me, looking at me and seeing her. He never once looked at me alone. The dress shop where I sewed for 8 years, they loved me for my stitching, not for me. The day I cut my finger and slowed down, they let me go. And now you." She finally looked up. There was no accusation in it. That was the worst part, no accusation, just a plain, terrible clarity. "You care for me, for the mastitis, the skillet, the leaks. And that's fine, I'm not complaining. It's more than I've had. But understand why I guard that suitcase so close. Because inside it is the one thing I ever chose. And as long as it's closed, it stays mine, chosen by me, without anybody putting a price on it. The day I open it, it stops being a secret and turns into one more thing people can look at and measure and want or not want. And I am tired, Wyatt, of being measured. My whole life I've been the price of something. Somebody's stitches, somebody's promise, somebody's daughter. I've never once been just mine." A long quiet settled. Outside wind pushed the bad-hinged gate and it screeched and neither of them moved to fix it. Wyatt sat down across from her, elbows on his knees. "I'm an orphan too now," he said. 5 weeks now. "And I'm going to tell you something I haven't told a living soul, not even Miss Etta." He swallowed. "When my daddy was dying, those last days he could hardly talk anymore, and I'd sit by the bed, waiting for something I didn't know what. I think I was waiting for him to ask me for something. Tell me, keep the ranch, or take care of the cattle, or don't sell the oak tree, anything. Something I could do for him, so I'd feel like he needed me. And he never asked me for a thing. He died, quiet, stubborn as I am, and left me this falling down ranch and a pile of debt and not one single thing I could do for him to keep from feeling so alone." He looked at his hands. "So, it's not true that I care for you for the mastitis. I just care for you because since you got to this house, somebody needs something again and I needed to be needed." "You understand." Dee set the shirt in her lap. She was looking at him with a face he hadn't seen. Not at the gate, not in the barn, not milking. "I understand," she said very quiet. "I understand exactly." And for a moment in that kitchen that smelled of clean skillet, 2 orphans sat looking at each other, recognizing in the other the same wound, the wound of never once being the first thing somebody chose. Wyatt was the one who broke it because he was the one most afraid of it. "I'm going to fix that gate," he said, standing up fast. "That screeching's about to drive me out of my mind." "Take the oil can," Dee said, going back to the shirt, letting him run. "Green one's by the well." He went out, and while he oiled that bad hinge under the gold evening light, he thought he'd never oiled anything with such care, like fixing that gate was in some crooked way, a way of asking somebody not to leave just yet. The one who broke the peace wasn't either of them. It was Cyrus Langford. He showed up on a Sunday. A brand new double cab truck, the kind nobody else in Redbud owned, announced itself with a cloud of dust from a long way off. Dee at the kitchen window watched it climb the rise. "Wyatt, truck coming. A nice one." "Whose is it?" He looked out. His jaw went tight. "Langford's." Whose Langford owns the water rights, Dee? Wyatt wiped his hands slow on his jeans. Good Bottomlin, a grain store, and the well concession off Cypress Spring. That's where the water comes from that runs half the valley in this ranch. My daddy owed him on the water bill. Owed him money. How much? A lot. He never told me how much. Go on out, but don't say much. That man doesn't get told extra. But it was too late. The truck stopped at the gate. The dust caught up to it and passed it, and Cyrus Langford climbed down unhurried, tipping his hat back instead of taking it off. Callahan, he said in that soft voice men use when everybody already does what they say without being told twice. He was heavy-set 50s, well-kept hands. Came to say hello, and to see the new arrival behind him climb down his son. Dalton Langford, 27, the same pressed shirt as his father and the same way of sizing things up, like he was pricing them. Dee came out wiping her hands on her apron, and both men turned to look at her at the same time, head to toe, and she felt that old, cold feeling in her stomach. The feeling of being appraised. So this is the girl with the suitcase, Cyrus said, smiling. Pleasure, miss. I've heard about you. Whole valley's heard about you. Is that so? Nice story they tell it. Old-fashioned. Came all this way to keep a marriage promise, is that right? Cyrus let his eyes drift over the ranch, the peeling adobe, the skinny cattle, and his smile didn't move, but his eyes were already running numbers. Get us some coffee, Callahan. We've got business to discuss. Inside, at the pine table hat finally off, Cyrus got right to it with that softness of his that cut deeper than shouting would have. Callahan, your father, rest him, owed me on the water. The Cypress Spring concession is mine, and the water that reaches this ranch comes off my land. Your father went 3 years without paying his water bill. 3 years! I never called it in because he was an old man, and it seemed a shame, and because I figured sooner or later, well... He let the sentence trail off and took a sip of coffee. Point is, now it's yours. You inherited the ranch, and you inherited the debt. Roughly what this whole place is worth, maybe a touch more, Wyatt said, nothing, both hands very still on the table. Dee by the stove had gone to stone. But I'm not a hard man, Cyrus went on. Didn't come to take your place from you, Lord, no. Came to offer you a way out. He looked at his son, looked at Dee, smiled again. My Dalton's needing a wife, a hard-working girl, decent good with her hands, and here's one that came to town looking for a husband on account of a promise. What a coincidence! A promise is a promise, isn't it? If one word from your late father brought her all this way, another word can take her somewhere better. The cold in Dee's stomach climbed to her throat. It's simple, Cyrus said, folding his hands. The girl marries my Dalton, joins my family, and as a wedding gift I forgive your water debt, all of it. Clean slate. You keep your ranch free and clear, not owing a dime. She gets a real house, tile floors, running water. Everybody wins. Even your late father rests easy, his daughter married well and settled. He looked at her. What do you say? A silence fell where you could hear the candle on the little shelf sputtering, and everyone looked at Dee, father, son, and Wyatt, waiting for her to say something because she was the coin the debt was to be paid in, and coins, as a rule, get asked as decoration. Dee opened her mouth, but it was Wyatt who spoke. No, he said. Cyrus turned slow. No, what, Callahan? Wyatt was on his feet without noticing he'd stood. No to all of it. I'll pay the water. Don't know how yet, but I'll pay it dollar by dollar on a payment plan if I have to. What I won't do is hand a person over like she's a down payment on a truck. Dee's not mine to give. She's not anybody's. That's the one clear thing I've got in this whole mess. Dalton stood up offended. Cyrus stopped him with 2 fingers, still smiling, though the smile had turned into something else. How touching, Cyrus said, standing slow, settling his hat. How romantic. Trouble is Callahan debts don't get paid with pretty speeches. He walked toward the door. I'll give you till the fair, 3 weeks. Founders Day at the festival, you bring me the water money, all of it, or you bring me this girl's signature, marrying into my family, one or the other, and if you bring me neither, I cut the water. And a ranch with no water in this valley isn't a ranch, it's just dirt. And I buy dirt cheap, he set his hat. Good day. Think it over. 3 weeks goes by fast. The truck pulled off, raising the same cloud of dust. Inside, nobody spoke until Dee broke the silence. 3 weeks, she said low. And he'll forgive the whole water debt if I marry his son. It's a lot of money, Wyatt. It's your whole ranch. I said don't say anything yet. He gathered the cup's hands too steady on purpose. Not tonight. Today that man just came to show us the size of the problem. Tomorrow we figure out how to fix it. And if it can't be fixed, then tomorrow I'll give him my answer. But not tonight. Not with him still smelling up my kitchen. That night, Dee didn't go to the barn. She'd been sleeping in the little back room, her father's old room, for a week now, while Wyatt kept to his bunk in the kitchen. But that night she couldn't sleep. She went out and sat under the live oak in the dark, the suitcase on her lap. Wyatt found her there. I'll do it, Dee said before he could speak. Her voice was steady, her eyes too bright. I'll marry Dalton. It's the sensible thing. That way you don't lose your father's ranch. And me well. I've always been the coin somebody spends on something. What's it matter who this time? At least this once it'll go toward something good toward you keeping what's yours. No, Wyatt said, sitting down beside her. It's not your decision. It's not yours either, he said. Not the way we just talked about with Langford. You're not anybody's, not mine, not his, not your father's memory. If you marry, let it be because you love a man, not because I owe a bucket of water. Dee hugged the suitcase to her chest. Easy to say when it's not your ranch about to be lost. It's my ranch about to be lost, Wyatt said, and I'd rather lose it than win it that way. She turned to look at him in the dark. Moonlight barely picked out the shape of the suitcase in her arms. Why? Dee asked, and she really didn't understand. Why would you rather lose the one thing you've got left from your father over a girl who showed up 3 weeks ago to keep a promise you never asked for? Wyatt sat quiet a moment, and instead of answering, he reached out and set his hand on the lid of the suitcase. Not to open it, just to touch it next to her hands. Open it, he said low. What? The suitcase. Open it. Not for me, for you. You've spent 3 weeks sleeping, holding on to something closed because you're scared that the day you open it, it stops being yours. I'll promise you one thing, Dee. Whatever's in there isn't going to stop being yours. I'm not going to take it from you. I'm not going to put a price on it. I'm not going to care for you more or less on account of what's inside. Open it today because you want to, and let it be the first thing in your whole life you open because you want to, not because somebody forced it open. Dee looked at him a long while, her hands trembling over the wicker. Then slow under the live oak by moonlight, Dee unbuckled the leather strap, lifted the lid. Inside, there was no gold. No wedding dress, no fine trousseau. There was first a bundle of fine white cloth, hand-embroidered with tiny orange blossom flowers, stitch by stitch perfect folded with years of care. It's the wedding linen my mother started sewing for me, Dee said, her voice cracking just at the last word. Before she died, for my wedding, whichever one it turned out to be. She never let anybody else finish it. She said the cloth was waiting till I chose. I finished it myself these last years at night, stitch by stitch, same as her. It's done. It's been waiting. And under the cloth at the bottom of the suitcase, a paper. The same paper, folded in 4, she'd offered him that first day at the gate. She took it out. This time she handed it to him. Wyatt unfolded it by moonlight. It was an old page in 2 different hands. On top, the cramped handwriting of a man, the late Ezra Whitfield. Below it, a shaky signature, Wyatt's father's. He read it aloud. I, Ezra Whitfield, owe Gideon Callahan my life. In the flood of 1972, he pulled me out of the creek when I'd already been given up for dead, and he never once asked to be paid back for it. I've got nothing to pay him with. No land, no money, nothing but my Delia, who's the best thing I ever made. Gideon's got nothing but his Wyatt either. We agreed the 2 of us not to bind them, but to bring together the 2 children we love most in case one day, God willing, they find each other. Let it not be for the debt. Let it be for them. If they don't love each other, let them tear this paper up. But let them know, two men who loved each other like brothers wanted before they died that their children wouldn't be alone. Wyatt lowered the paper. His eyes were wet, and he didn't care that she saw it. It wasn't a debt, he said. My daddy never asked me for a thing when he was dying, because he'd already asked me for it years before, without ever saying it. He asked me not to be alone. He laughed a broken laugh, looking toward the house, toward the little candle he could see through the window. That's why he died quiet. Stubborn old man. He'd already said it all in this paper. Dee cried without a sound, the linen in her lap, the paper of two dead fathers in his hand. My father didn't send me as payment, she said, understanding it out loud for the first time, like trying on an idea for size. He sent me because he didn't want me left alone. He loved me. Me, myself. That's why he made me promise to come. It wasn't a transaction. It was the last thing he had left to give me. A place not to be alone. And I nearly ran you off to a bench at the bus depot, Wyatt said. They laughed, both of them, faces wet under the live oak, the suitcase open between them for the first time. Langford didn't wait for the fare. 3 days later, Wyatt went out at dawn to open the irrigation ditch and found it dry, the ground already cracking in the early light. He walked up to the spring gate and found it shut, a new steel valve, a shiny new padlock, and a sign nailed to a post. Privacy concession. No trespassing. Langford. He came back with his face set hard. Dee was waiting at the gate. What happened? You look like death. Cut the water. Who? Who do you think, Dee? Langford. Padlock the spring gate. No more water reaches this place. Dee went still. But he said we had till the fair. He didn't lie exactly. He wants the money or the signature at the fair, but he's cutting the water now, so by the time the fair comes, I'll already be dried out and out of options. Either way, he wins. He got ahead of us. Wyatt sat down on a fence rail. The cattle have the well that's enough for them to drink. But the garden and the field crop dry up in 4 days without irrigation. By the fair, I'll be so wrung out, I'll have to hand you over or sell the ranch. Either one, he wins. Dee watched the garden, already starting to wilt in the rows, the padlock shining up there on the hillside, and Wyatt slumped on the fence rail. Then she crossed her arms. Then let's not play his game, she said. You want to pay him with money? Fine, let's get the money before the fair and pay him straight dollar for dollar, all of it, and he can keep his forgiven debt and take his son somewhere else. Wyatt laughed without much heart in it. And where from Dee? The ranch isn't worth half what I owe. I've got no way. I do, she said. I know how to sew. What came next were the 2 hardest and finest weeks either of them had ever lived. The sewing machine, an old treadle model, was at Miss Etta's, the other thing Dee had carried out of her old life and left behind, the days she walked in on foot because she couldn't carry everything at once. They went to fetch it that same afternoon. Well, look who's finally going to make something of themselves, Miss Etta said, helping load the machine onto the truck. I figured you two would spend your whole lives arguing over who owes who. I need to sew, Miss Etta, Dee said. A lot and fast before the fair. How much do you need? Dee told her the number. Miss Etta's eyebrows went up. That's a heap of sewing, honey. That's why I need you to spread the word. You know the whole town. Tell them a seamstress came through who sews better than the shop girl over in the county seat, half the price, and fast. Sews better than the shop girl, does she? Much better, and fast. Miss Etta studied her, nodded, and crossed herself, slow sealing the deal with the Lord as witness. You'll have customers by morning, she said, Lord willing. And she did. They started coming to the gate of the Lone Oak Ranch, dresses that needed altering, tablecloths, 2 wedding gowns for the season. Dee sewed sun up to moon down, fingers flying the treadle, marking the hours like a stubborn heartbeat. Wyatt, who knew nothing about sewing, learned everything else. All right, tell me what to do, he said the first day, standing in the middle of a kitchen buried in fabric, feeling useless. Take this over to the school teachers and bring back the bridal one and collect. Don't you forget to collect. You've got the face of a man who just gives things away. I do not have the face of a man who gives things away. You have the worst collector's face I've ever seen, Dee said, not missing a stitch on the treadle. That's how you're 3 years behind on a water bill. Learn to ask for money, Wyatt. Today. And he learned, hauling clothes back and forth, taking down the measurements she called out, collecting while looking folks in the eye, writing down every dollar that came in against the debt in a little notebook, counting the days off backward like a sentence. At night, when Dee's eyes gave out and she couldn't thread the needle, straight Wyatt would take it from her hands without asking. Let me. You don't know how. Don't need to know how to sew to thread a needle. Need to see and you can't see straight anymore. I see fine. That's your third try with the same thread. Dee, give it here. And she'd hand it over, and he'd thread the needle with those clumsy fence wire fingers, tongue stuck out, without knowing it, and hand it back. And for 1 second their hands would brush, and neither one said a word. One of those nights, he fell asleep sitting on the bench, worn out. Dee stopped the treadle, came over and laid her hand on the back of his neck. Slow, just to feel the warmth of a sleeping man in her kitchen, a thing she'd never had. He stirred. I wasn't asleep, Wyatt said without opening his eyes. Course not. You were thinking with your eyes shut. And snoring. I don't snore. You snore like that old bull, Dee said, and pulled her hand away before he felt it, though he already had. And they both knew it and laughed about the face Langford was going to make. They invented the scene over and over so as not to think about the deadline. Do the old man's voice? Wyatt asked. Well now, sugar, Dee crooned soft, mocking Cyrus. I'll forgive the water bill as a wedding gift. Aren't I just a saint? Come join my family, bring those hands of yours. And then Dalton's face. Dalton doesn't have a face. Dalton's got the expression of a calf that just caught a whiff of feed. And they laughed till their sides hurt so as not to count the days. And one of those dawns measuring cloth together by candlelight, their hands met in the middle, and this time neither one pulled away. You know what's strange? Dee said one of those nights, not stopping the treadle. We're sewing to pay off a debt that's trying to force us to marry other people. And meanwhile, sewing together we're— She didn't find the word, let it sit. This, Wyatt said, threading her needle. Don't marry me for the ranch, Dee said suddenly, stopping the treadle, looking at him. Promise me that. Even if we scrape the money together, even if we pay Langford, even if everything comes out fine, don't ask me to stay to fix up your ranch. I already had a father who loved me for my mother, and bosses who loved me for my stitches. I can't stand a husband who loves me for the mastitis and the leaky roof. Her voice shook, but she didn't let it break. If you ever ask me, for the girl, not the suitcase, not the promise, not the debt, for me, or don't ask at all. Wyatt set the needle down and looked at her a long while. That girl, among the fabric eyes, tired and steady. I promise, he said. The day I ask, you'll know it's for you. There won't be a shadow of doubt in it. I swear it on the live oak. On the live oak, she repeated, and almost smiled, and went back to the treadle because if she kept looking at him, she was going to cry, and there wasn't time crying. There was a fair coming, and a debt to whittle down, stitch by stitch. The night before the fair, they counted the money on the pine table by candlelight, the heap of bills and coins that was the fruit of 2 weeks without sleep. You count, Dee said. My eyes can't do numbers anymore. Wyatt counted, slow licking his fingers, sorting into little stacks. When he finished, he didn't say anything. How much is it short? How's it short? I sewed till my fingers bled, Wyatt. She held up her fingertips, pricked raw. Count again. He counted again. And again. 3 times he counted, 3 times it came out the same. It's short, about a quarter of it, he said finally, voice hollow. 3 years of water bills adds up to a lot, Dee. We got most of it. Most. Most doesn't do a man like Langford any good. Dee sank onto the bench, looking at the pile of money that didn't reach. Tomorrow, at the fair, Langford's going to be standing in the town square waiting on one of 2 things, the full money or the signature. And I don't have the full money. Dee closed her eyes, and in the dark of the kitchen, Wyatt started to understand what he was going to have to do the next day. He wasn't afraid. He felt a cold, clean clarity, like well water at dawn. That last dawn before the fair, Wyatt never closed his eyes, and at 4 o'clock, when he couldn't stand tossing on the bunk anymore, he got dressed and walked into town to Miss Etta's mill, the only soul in Redbud who lit her stove before he did. He found her grinding cornmeal in candlelight. "Either you got married last night or you've lost your mind," Miss Etta said without turning around. "Nobody knocks on my door this hour if it's not one or the other. Need some advice, Miss Etta? Those I give free, and folks usually waste 'em anyway. Sit talk." Wyatt sat on the mill bench, pulled the Two Fathers paper from his shirt pocket folded in four, and set it on the counter between them. "I came up short paying Langford the water money," he said. "Close short. Tomorrow at the fair he's going to ask for the full amount or Dee's signature, and I don't have the full amount." Miss Etta stopped grinding. "So I've got a bigger problem than the debt. And that's this paper. It's a marriage promise. It's what's owed to you. It's your right to marry her without a soul saying a word." Wyatt sat looking at the paper. "Miss Etta, tell me something. If I ask Dee to stay today, with this paper still around existing, why would she stay?" "Well, because she loves you. Anybody can see that." "I didn't ask if she loves me. I asked why she'd stay, and that's not the same thing." Miss Etta wiped her hands slow on her apron because she understood this was one of those questions with weight to it. "All right, explain it to me." "That girl," Wyatt said, "has spent 24 years being the payment for something. The daughter her father loved on account of her dead mother. The seamstress the shop loved for her stitches till she cut her finger and they let her go. The promise 2 old men signed on that paper. Never once, not one time in her life, has somebody loved her alone, without a debt standing behind it. And she told me plain, Miss Etta. She said the day you ask me for something, ask for me, not the suitcase, not the promise, not the debt, or don't ask at all. And as long as that paper exists, she's never going to be sure why she stayed. Deep down, she'll always think I stayed to keep my father's word. I stayed for the promise. I stayed because I fixed up his ranch and we sewed together to pay the water bill. That paper, which is my right to marry her, is the very thing that robs her of the right to choose me clean. You understand?" Miss Etta looked at him a long while in the candlelight, and then slow she smiled. The smile of an old woman who's watched a lot of lives go by and knows one when it settles into place. "Gideon Callahan had a smarter boy than he ever gave himself credit for," she said. "What are you going to do with the paper?" Wyatt picked the document back up off the counter, folded it again along the same worn creases, and tucked it into his shirt pocket against his chest. "What my daddy never learned to do," he said, "is let go of what he was holding so the other person could stay on their own account." "Thank you, Miss Etta. You didn't even give me time to say what the advice was." "You already gave it to yourself. I just let you say it out loud. Sometimes that's the only thing a person needs." He walked back to the ranch with the sun just starting to color the hills and went to wake Dee. "Get dressed, pretty girl," he said from the doorway. "Wear your best." "We're going to the fair today." Dee sat up in the dark. "To hand Langford the money." "To the fair?" Wyatt said. "Rest I'll tell you there. Trust me just this once. I've spent 3 weeks doing everything your way. The sewing, not playing his game, the skillet, all of it. Today, do one thing my way. Get dressed pretty, bring the suitcase, and don't ask me a single question till we're standing in that square." Dee looked at him in the dim light. There was something new in him. A calm she'd never seen. The calm of a man who finally knows exactly what he's about to do. "Why the suitcase?" she asked. "Because today's the day," Wyatt said, and didn't explain any further. She got dressed. The one good dress she had, a blue one she'd sewn herself, and before leaving she opened the suitcase without any fear now and took out. She thought about leaving it, but something told her it needed to come along today, and she laid it on top. They set off with the sun just starting to color the hills. Wyatt drove quiet, and Dee, the suitcase in her lap, watched his stubborn profile and felt something she'd never had a name for, the feeling of heading towards something instead of running from it. Her whole life she'd only ever arrived places. This was the first time she was going toward one. Redbud was in full swing for Founder's Day, the one festival of the year. Food stalls, the smell of funnel cakes and roasted corn, paper streamers strung pole to pole, the little town band tuning up by the gazebo, kids running underfoot everywhere. The whole town was out, and in the middle of the square by the gazebo, in his fine hat and pressed shirt, his son Dalton at his side, stood Cyrus Langford, waiting a paper in his hand. The marriage contract he'd already brought, ready for the signing, so sure he was. Wyatt parked the truck, cut the engine, sat a second with his hands on the wheel. "Dee," he said, not looking at her, "whatever happens now, remember one thing. What I'm about to do, I do because I want to. Nobody made me. Not the debt, not the paper, not the old men's promise. Me on my own. Is that clear?" "No," Dee said, heart in her throat. "It's not clear at all. What are you fixin' to do?" Wyatt finally looked at her and smiled, that tired, clean smile. "What my daddy never learned to ask me for, and I never learned to ask him," he said. "I'm going to ask out loud. Come on." He got out, came around, opened her door, and held out his hand to help her down, suitcase and all, and together they walked toward the center of the square, toward Cyrus Langford, while the whole town of Redbud, little by little, stopped what it was doing to watch. Cyrus saw them coming and smiled like a man who'd already won. "Callahan," he said, raising his voice a little so the folks nearby would hear, because men like him liked an audience for their generosity. "Right on time. I like that. Bring the money or bring the signature." The band had stopped playing. The nearby crowd had gone quiet, that silence that runs through a gathering when it smells something about to happen. Miss Etta, by her pie stand, pressed her hands together. Wyatt stopped in front of Cyrus, Dee at his side, suitcase in hand. "I brought the money," Wyatt said, and pulled out the roll of bills. Everything 2 weeks of sewing had earned, and set it on the table of the stall next to them in plain sight of everybody. Cyrus weighed it with his eyes, and his smile stretched wider because he was a man who could count from a distance. "Short," he said softly, savoring the word. "It's short, Callahan. I can see it from here, short about a quarter, so you didn't bring the money. You brought a piece of the money, and that's not the same thing." He held out the contract and a pen. "But I'm a man of my word, said money in full or the signature." Since the money's short, he offered the pen to Dee without even looking at her face, at her hand. "Sign, honey, and everybody's happy. I'll even forgive what's left on the water wedding gift. I'm a generous man." Dee looked at the pen, looked at the contract, looked at Dalton, waiting with the face of a man about to collect a prize heifer, and felt that cold feeling of being a coin again. But then Wyatt stepped forward. "She's not signing a thing," he said, and before Cyrus could answer, Wyatt pulled from his shirt pocket the paper folded in four, the paper of the 2 dead fathers. The promise. He raised it high so the whole town could see. "Redbud," Wyatt said, and his voice shook, but he didn't lower it. "Y'all know her as the girl with the suitcase, the one who walked in 3 weeks ago to keep a promise her father made to mine. Here's the promise." The square listened dead quiet. Even the children had gone still. 2 old men who loved each other like brothers signed this paper before they died, agreeing to bring their children together so neither one would be left alone. "That's why she came to my gate, on account of a promise made by dead men." He paused. "But a father wrote one more thing on this same paper." He read it out loud for everyone. "Let it not be for the debt. Let it be for them. If they don't love each other, let them tear this paper up." And then Wyatt Callahan, in front of all of Redbud, took the promise and tore it once, twice, into little pieces that fell to the ground, where the festival wind scattered them among the paper streamers, colors and colors, till you couldn't tell one from the other anymore. A murmur ran through the crowd. Cyrus frowned. "Have you lost your mind, Callahan?" he said, and for the first time that soft voice climbed a notch. "You just tore up your only way out. Without that promise, without that paper, you've got no claim to marry her, and with no marrying her, you've got no way to pay me the water. You just handed me your ranch in front of the whole town. I already paid you part of the water. It's right there on the table. The rest I'll pay on a plan, dollar by dollar, with her sewing and my work. What I'm not going to pay you ever, Cyrus, is with a person. Nobody's for sale here. Wyatt's voice held steady. Collect your money like a decent man, or cut the water and sue me for whatever you please. But leave her be. She's not anybody's promise anymore. Dalton stepped forward, handed his hat brim. Pa, this broke down. Hush, Dalton, Cyrus said through his teeth, because he'd already started to hear how the murmur of the crowd was turning, and men like him know which way a square is leaning. There's no more promise, Wyatt said, turning his back on the Langfords like they'd already stopped existing, and he turned to Dee and spoke to her alone, though the whole world could hear it. You don't owe anybody a thing now. Not your father, not mine, not this paper. You're free for the first time in your life. You're not anybody's promise, not anybody's payment, not the coin in anybody's debt. You're just you. I tore it up so that when I say what I'm about to say, there won't be one shred of doubt about why. Dee's eyes had filled the suitcase trembling in her hand. Wyatt took off his hat, and right there in the middle of the square, no bent knee, no fancy speech, he told her what he had to tell her in his own plain rancher's grammar, the only one he knew. I don't talk pretty. My daddy didn't either, and for not knowing how he died quiet and left me alone. I don't want to die quiet like him, so I'm going to say this ugly but clear. Dee, I don't love you for the promise I already tore that up. I don't love you for the mastitis or the skillet or the leaky roof or because you so pretty. Those are things you do. I love you, the you that gets up before sunrise, so she won't owe a roof to anybody, the you that guards a suitcase because it's the one thing she ever chose. The you that told me to ask for her or not ask at all. So I'm asking for you, his voice held. Stay. Not to save my ranch. Let the ranch go under. Stay because I, Wyatt Callahan, choose you today at this fair in front of everybody of my own free will and owing nothing. I choose you. Will you choose me? The square had gone entirely silent. Even the band stood with instruments in hand, not playing. Dee took a moment to speak. When she did, her voice came out shaking but whole, and she spoke to him, but the whole square heard it. You know what it is, Wyatt? Do you know what it is to go 24 years and never once, not one single time, have somebody choose you for you? I was the daughter my father loved because he saw my dead mother in me. I was the seamstress who was worth her stitches till I cut my finger and stopped being worth anything. I was the promise two old men signed on a paper. My whole life I was the price of something, never the thing somebody chose. Her voice cracked once, and she let it crack because she didn't care anymore who saw. And you just tore up in front of this whole town the one thing that gave you any claim to me, just so I'd know you choose me, with no paper and no debt behind it. She looked at him. So look at me good, Wyatt Callahan, because for the first time in my life, somebody is looking at just me, and I am not going to miss it. Then Dee set the wicker suitcase down in the middle of the square in front of everyone. She opened it and took out the embroidered linen, the trousseau her mother started, and she finished the most hers thing in the whole world, and put it into his hands. This, Dee said, voice wet but steady, my mother started for the wedding of whichever daughter chose for herself. I finished it at night, waiting for this day. I've carried this cloth shut up in a suitcase for years, never opening it because I didn't want to give the most mine thing I had to anybody who'd love me for something else. She closed his hands over the cloth. So take it, Wyatt Callahan. I'm giving it to you open on my own account because I choose you too today, at this fair in front of everybody. And the town square of Redbud erupted. The band struck up. Miss Etta cried clapping. Kids hollered without knowing why, just happy. Cyrus Langford stood there with his useless contract, folded it up, settled his hat, and walked off through a crowd that let him pass without looking at him, because a whole town had just picked a side and it wasn't his. Wyatt pulled Dee into his arms in the middle of the square, the linen cloth between them, and spoke into her ear, low, just for her under all the music. And the water will pay it, stitch by stitch, dollar by dollar, together. owing that old buzzard nothing. But that's the least of it. The important part's already said. The important part's already said, she repeated, laughing and crying at once. That same afternoon, while the fair still played on in the distance, they went back to the ranch a while, just the two of them, to breathe. Dee took the wicker suitcase and set it on the bed. "What are you doing?" Wyatt asked from the doorway. "Emptying it." She turned it out entirely, down to the bottom, something she'd never once done in her life. The clothes, the thread, her mother's thimble, all of it out, and she left the suitcase open, empty, hollow at the foot of the bed. "It's not going to keep secrets anymore," Dee said, running her hand along the wicker inside. "Now it's going to hold both our clothes. Your shirt with the worn elbow and my blue dress in the same drawer. Things belonging to two people who chose to stay don't get kept separate. And this," Wyatt pointed to the embroidered linen she'd set aside on a chair, "isn't going in there. It's the finest thing you own." "You going to keep it hid?" "I kept it hid for 24 years, Wyatt. Scared of giving it to somebody who'd love me for something else." Dee took the linen and walked to the kitchen window, the one that let in the gold evening light off the live oak every afternoon. "See what all that hiding got me? Nothing. A thing that fine doesn't belong shut away. So where's it belong?" "Wherever the sun can reach it." And she hung the linen in the window like a curtain. The evening sun came through her mother's embroidery and painted the kitchen gold flowers of shadow scattered across the floor. "Same as people," Dee said, watching the light. "You don't keep them shut up in a suitcase for fear of losing them. You set them where the light gets in, and you choose them every single day." Wyatt wrapped his arms around her from behind both of them, watching the sun come through her mother's flowers. "One thing," he said against her hair. "Folks in town called you the girl with the suitcase." "I know. Well, they'll have to go find themselves another girl and another suitcase," Wyatt said, "because we're changing your name." And they did. In time, nobody in Redbud called her the girl with the suitcase anymore, because there was no closed-up suitcase left, no secret to carry, no promise hanging over her. They called her simply Dee Callahan from the Lone Oak Ranch. Not anybody's intended. The chosen one. The one who stayed because she wanted to. And the gate, the one with the bad hinge that used to screech like a lost soul, never screeched again. "Why do you keep oiling that thing so much?" Dee asked him one morning, watching him with the oil can for the umpteenth time. "It doesn't screech anymore." "That's exactly why," Wyatt said, swinging the gate open and shut without a sound. "A gate that screeches is a gate afraid somebody's going to leave. This one's not scared anymore."